All right, I have a quiz for you. What do these 4 YouTubers have in common? Do you notice what they have in their hands? That's right, they're actually holding their microphones. I've seen this cropping up more and more lately, and at first it seemed kind of weird. I mean, you can buy a mic stand, people. And Pete, come on, that's a wireless mic. Just clip it to your shirt, for Christ's sake. But it turns out there's a really good reason they're holding their microphones. And you'll notice I'm holding the Lauten Audio LS-208 right now. So we'll get to this mic in a minute, but first, why the heck are YouTubers holding their mics? The answer is simple. Background noise. YouTubers often record in pretty noisy environments, and the closer you can get your mic to your mouth, the quieter the background noise is going to be. And to be honest, a wireless mic on your chest or a shotgun mic on your camera is probably going to be too far away, and it might be picking up too much background noise. And for some people, sometimes it's just easiest to hold your mic. So I was chatting with Lauten Audio the other day, and I commented about this trend I'd noticed with YouTubers hand holding their mics. And they said, hey, we've got a mic for that. And wow, they really do. This is the LS-208, and it's an incredibly versatile mic. It works for vocalists, studio engineers, and content creators. Yeah, actually. And guess what? This is a condenser mic, but in some really important ways, it behaves more like a dynamic microphone. You know how people say you need a dynamic mic for podcasting and live streaming and all that? Well, the LS-208, a condenser microphone, might actually be a better choice, and we'll get to that. And I gotta say, there's just something about holding a microphone. It's more engaging somehow. I feel like I want to talk into it more, and just, it brings something out in me that maybe a mic on a stand doesn't. So having the ability to hold this microphone and talk to you, it's kind of cool. So let me tell you about the mic first. The LS-208 comes in a really nice case, and I've reviewed a couple of products recently that had cases that were kind of more like an afterthought, but this is really sturdy and really well made. And inside the case, you get the mic, which is basically all black except for the logo. You get a foam pop filter, which you absolutely should use if you're speaking into the mic, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit. You also get a nicely designed spider-style shock mount, and this will attach to a desktop boom arm or a floor stand, and you'll be completely free from thumps and bumps. You also get a hard mount, which is like, it has no shock absorption, but would be great for live performance. And you also get your hands. To hold the mic. And I say that because it has built-in shock absorption, which greatly reduces handling noise. You could definitely use this mic on a gig, holding it in your hand just like a Shure SM58, but with way better sound. And you can definitely hold this mic in your videos if you want to, because I'm doing it now. Okay, but I know what you're thinking. Hey, Matt, you can't use a condenser mic that way. Condenser mics are delicate. They pick up too much background noise. They don't like loud sounds. You can't get too close to them. Not true for the LS-208. So like I said, the mic has internal shock mounting. And of course, it's not perfect. Like, no microphone is going to pick up zero shock. But here, just basic handling. You can hear it a little bit and maybe hear the cable rattling around on my desk here, but it's pretty quiet. So I mentioned that this mic behaves like a dynamic mic, and it does so in 2 very important ways. The first is that this mic can handle very loud sounds. Heck, you can mic a snare drum with it. In fact, in the video notes, I'll put a link to another creator's channel where he uses this mic on a snare drum. It really is a good all-rounder mic, and it can take just about any volume you throw at it without needing to use a pad. The second way the LS-208 behaves like a dynamic mic is that you can get really close to it. A major complaint that people often have about condenser mics is that they're sensitive to plosives, so you can't get close to them without all sorts of horrible pops. But the Lauten mic has a built-in pop filter, so even without the foam filter on top, it does a decent job of avoiding pops. Now, with the foam filter in place, plosive pops are just about non-existent. Here, let me show you. Okay, so I've taken off the pop filter, obviously, and you're gonna hear some pops, but they're much more subdued than you would expect from a condenser mic. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. All right, let me put the pop filter back on. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. I think that's pretty impressive. Not only that, the mic was designed and tuned to sound its best with the pop filter in place, so you're not losing anything when you put the foam filter on. In fact, you're supposed to have it on. So let me just remove it though. Now, the mic does sound brighter when you remove the foam filter, as you might expect. And if you use a circular windscreen instead, you might also get a brighter sound. My lips can literally be touching the foam, and I don't get many plosives, which is really unusual for a condenser mic. And that also means my background noise is going to be really reduced because I'm so close to the mic. So there are several ways that the LS-208 is emulating a dynamic microphone, but why not just use a dynamic microphone? Well, I can sum it up in one word: frequency response. Let's go visit our friends over at Audio Test Kitchen and see how the LS-208's frequency response stacks up against a couple of popular dynamic microphones. I've got the Shure SM7B, which is a very popular mic for all sorts of content creators, and I also have the Shure SM58, which is a hugely popular live performance mic and is very closely related to the SM7B. Now, I'm not picking on Shure here, by the way. It's just that the Audio Test Kitchen website focuses mostly on condenser mics, so there aren't that many dynamic mics to choose from. As you can see from the frequency response curves, the dynamic mics are getting rolled off in the 6 kilohertz to 9 kilohertz range, depending on which mic you're looking at and how you define a roll-off. But the LS-208 has a much more extended high-frequency range. But also, look at the low end. Both Shure mics start rolling off pretty significantly around 100 hertz. The LS-208 has a slight roll-off, but not nearly as severe as the dynamic mics. That means the 208 has a much more extended frequency response than either one of those two mics, which is funny when you think about it, because most people associate the Shure SM7B with a deep-voiced radio announcer. But that's because of the proximity effect, because it gives a boost to the low end when you get close to the microphone, but that's not reflected on this chart. One other reason to choose a condenser mic over a dynamic mic is that condenser mics tend to be more sensitive. In other words, they pick up more sound. They're louder. Dynamic mics are notorious for being really quiet. If you've got a cheap preamp, you might not be able to bring the signal level up loud enough without adding a whole bunch of noise. Condenser mics are generally more sensitive than dynamic mics, though interestingly, the LS-208 is kind of on the low side for a condenser mic. Even so, it's nowhere near as quiet as dynamic mics such as the SM7B or even the Rode Pod mic. Your mic preamp should be able to handle the LS-208 really easily. If you've watched my other review videos before, you know that for me, nothing is completely rainbows and unicorns. There are some downsides to any mic, including this one. Now, my first issue is that the filter switches are not laid out very logically. Now, it's great that you've got both low and high roll-off filters so you can dial in your sound very precisely, but the low roll-off switch has the off position on the left, followed by 120 hertz in the middle and 50 hertz on the right. So you go from no roll-off to extreme roll-off to mild roll-off, and that's gonna take some getting used to. The high roll-off filter is configured differently. The center is the neutral position, and you flip the switch to the left and you roll off at 8 kilohertz, flip it to the right and you roll off at 10 kilohertz, and I think that's a little more logical, but I'd prefer if the two switches behaved the same way. Now, I should show you how those work. All right, so this is all neutral, and I'm going to now switch the low roll-off filter to 120 hertz. This is rolling off at 120 hertz, and it's probably pretty dramatic if you're wearing headphones. And now I'm going to flip it to 50 hertz. This is rolling off at 50 hertz, and you're probably not hearing quite as much roll off, but there you go. And back to neutral. Okay, so now for the high end, this is at neutral, and let's see, sizzle, 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 steak. Just some S's there so you can hear the high end. Now I'm going to roll off at 8 kilohertz, sizzle, 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 steak, and then we'll roll off at 10 kilohertz, which won't be quite as dramatic. This is 10 kilohertz, sizzle, 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 steak. And we're back to neutral. The other downside with this microphone is the price. The mic is definitely aimed at professionals, and it costs more than a Shure SM7B or even a Electro Voice RE20, for example, which are kind of the go-to mics for broadcast. But with those mics, people often feel the need to buy a signal booster as well, and that's because those mics are really not very sensitive. So that's going to add another $100 or so to your budget, and you still don't have the same frequency response that you get with the LS-208. And I don't see anyone holding an SM7B in their hands. So if you want to check out current prices on the LS-208, or you just want more info on the mic, please use my affiliate links in the video notes down below. The LS-208 can do so much, so if you've got the budget for it, it's definitely worth considering. Noisy rooms and loud sources, they're just no problem. One of the most common questions I get from viewers is how to remove background noise from their microphones. And the Lauten Audio LS-208 is definitely a solution that could help, but there are other ways to deal with background noise too. In fact, I made an entire video about how to reduce background noise and room echoes, and you should check it out right here.